Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream of Python Bytes. I almost forgot which podcast we were doing today, but yeah.
Test and Bytes. We're doing Test and Bytes.
Test and Bytes. So let's kick it off. Hello and welcome to Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds. This is episode 247, recorded August 25th. Really? Oh, we're almost done. In 2021. I'm Brian Ocken.
I'm Michael Kennedy.
And I'm Dan Taylor.
So Dan, before we jump into things, welcome to the show. But can you let people know kind of who you are?
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here. Big fan of the show. So I'm Dan Taylor. I'm a program manager on our Python team. So I manage a team of program managers that work on our Python developer tools. For example, our Python support and Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio IDE. And we also manage some of our engagements with the Python community. For example, our sponsorships of PyCon and the Python Software Foundation.
Nice. That's awesome. You know, something, Dan, I thought was pretty interesting. I was just watching a talk from Brett Cannon, getting ready for an interview I did on Talk Python with Lucas Lenga. A lot of stuff going on there. But the talk was only from 2018, and Brett went into detail describing what VS Code was. That was like Atom or Sublime and all these things. It needs no introduction these days, does it?
No, it's just been amazing watching just how much it's grown over the past year and it become a household name for people, especially in the Python community.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, Michael, how do I keep my computer awake?
Well, first, you make sure it gets 8 hours of sleep a day. You don't overwork it. I know it's work from home, so you might be working on it, playing on it, and watching TV. Oh, wait, this is a totally different thing. So I recently was working on this project around some of the courses over at Talk Python training, and I needed to do a bunch of video processing and re-encoding for take the same videos, but make them smaller. So I wrote some really cool Python code to go through and take the source videos and do all this analysis and re-encode it into a bunch of formats. You know, that takes like 5 hours for one of our courses.
Huh.
And if my computer goes to sleep, it's going to take more than 5 hours. I got to go and keep waking the thing up again, right? Well, what can I do? I could go into the settings and say, you know what? Don't do that. Just don't go to sleep right now. But then maybe I'll forget. Who knows? It would be cool if just while my Python code was running, it would stay awake, and then it would potentially not stay awake when it was done. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found this cool library called WakePy. And the implementation of using this is ridiculously easy. You just say from WakePy, import keep awake, and then you create a context manager. With keep awake, do the stuff you want it to do while the computer doesn't go to sleep. Done. That's cool,
Seems
huh?
easy.
Yeah, it's super easy. It works cross-platform. It works on Windows. It works on Linux. It doesn't really work on Mac OS because there's a bug, but it's supposed to work on Mac OS, which is where I'm running this right now. So that's kind of unfortunate, wouldn't you say? It turns out it's one of these strings versus bytes weirdness. So I actually decided this is kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a PR. There's a PR that says it doesn't work on Python 3, but you know what? And here's the error. If anyone cares, you get this: a bytes-like object is required, not string. So I submitted a PR. The PR is not yet addressed or responded to or anything. So if you want to use this for the time being, I can really only on Mac OS. To be clear, I can only recommend it off of my branch until you see that PR merge, because it won't work at all. But if you're using Windows or Linux, I think it'll just work straight away. And it's interesting, if you actually dig into it, I kind of imagined it would just be doing the same thing. But if you dig into it, like in the Mac version, there's literally a command you can type on. This is awesome. You can type on the terminal. You can type caffeinate. That'll keep your OS from going to sleep if you just run that on the terminal. If you type a -D, it'll keep the display on. Things like that. It won't let the screen go to sleep. But over on, say, Windows, it does a bunch of tweaking with threads. So what it'll do is go and set its current thread to be continuous, system required, display required, as a bunch of bitwise flags. And then Over on Linux, it uses what else? It uses something completely different. It runs mask and unmask, which I don't actually know what that does. I suspect it keeps it awake. So anyway, it's a pretty cool little project. It's very simple, but it also solves the problem that I can imagine a ton of people doing data science-y like things would run into, because they want to do a bunch of processing and not have their system go to sleep. What do you all think?
I think I'm just glad that I know about Caffeinate now, because that's cool.
Yeah, if you want to keep your Mac awake, you literally just have to go over and type Caffeinate on the terminal. You don't have to have Python or any of those kinds of things. But if you want your Python code to control it, this thing is basically subpros juggling that command.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine if you're writing code that's scraping websites, looking for updates and things like that, you really wouldn't want your computer to go to sleep. And I always find myself messing around in all the power settings and maxing things out. So this is nice.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Well, that's it for that one, Brian.
Cool.
Off to you.
What do we got next? We have, how to create a great Stack Overflow question. Actually, this is great.
Yeah, Stack Overflow just sold for like $1.4 billion. It's quite the site. Yeah.
Who did it sell to? Do you know?
No, I don't remember. Some company I hadn't heard of.
How did I miss that?
So I don't really, of course, when I Google stuff, I get a bunch of Stack Overflow answers, and I've utilized it. And I like tried to play the whole game for a little while of like trying to get Stack Overflow points and stuff. And then I realized, yeah, this just isn't my thing, but it's a thing for a lot of people of like answering this. But the reason why I brought this up isn't just to get great answers on Stack Overflow, but there is a good trick to that, and it's good. But it's also, if you're asking questions really from anybody, if you send any sort of expert that you know, like maybe if you want to ask a pyramid question to Michael or a PyTest question from me, these sorts of things are the same topics apply. So let's just jump in. This is from Kevin Markham at Data School. Kevin's a great guy. We kind of hang out with him sometimes at PyCons and stuff when we had those. But the punchline of his article, which we'll link to, is you need to write a brief introduction, and you want to have self-contained code examples, and then detail the expected results and why you want those results, and then add any other important notes, link to relevant questions, and then also write a title that summarizes the question. These all seem sort of obvious, so I'm really glad that Kevin went through kind of an example. So he started with an example that one of his students asked him about pandas. And the question really was about data frames and filling in missing values, and it had a domain-specific thing that is somebody was asking him. And then Kevin goes through and rewrites the question as a good Stack Overflow question. And it's night and day. It's like amazing to see this. So I really encourage people to read the article. But what a couple of things that I really love is converting, that he doesn't really talk about, but convert the example from any domain-specific stuff to a toy example. And that skill of really, and that's a good skill to have anyway, is to say, this problem that I'm having in my code, it's really a generic problem. How do I make that using a toy example to describe the problem? And oftentimes, actually, you can answer your own question once you get it into a toy example, and you realize, I'm overthinking it. So this is a good first step. And so that's a great thing to see. But this is a great example because it's like some architecture problem, but then he turns it into colors of toys. And it's an easier problem to see. The other thing is making sure that the toy example is runnable with all the import statements and everything, so somebody can just plop it into their own editor and run it to see, if they can see the same problem and see if they can figure out.
That's good advice. If it's too specific or you don't have the data or it's not complete, you have to speculate rather than actually verify you can fix the problem or not, right?
Yeah. And the part one of the things that I wouldn't have thought of is linking to other questions, because there's a fear, I think, of moderators and also other people reading it is, this is probably if it's simple, it's probably already been answered. What, did you already look or whatever? And the act of linking to other answers to say, this question over here doesn't really, it kind of helps me, but it's missing because of this or something. Some reason why the other answers, and that's an interesting take on it, just so that people don't dismiss you right away as somebody that didn't do any research to begin with. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's cool. Usually by the time I get to Stack Overflow, I'm pretty desperate for help. And so forming really good questions so you get the best answers and is really important. I really like that. Narrowing it down to a reproducible example.
Yeah, and people can be mean on Stack Overflow and on Reddit and on YouTube and other places on the internet. But if you show that you've tried, I think that will disarm them somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I've seen questions like, I have this homework question and I can't do my homework. Could anyone help? And I get that in email too. And they're like, no, no one can help. No one wants to do your homework for you. Yes. And no one should. But if you have a legitimate problem or you think you found a legitimate bug or there's just no documentation and it's clear you've tried, I suspect that'll disarm people. They may still not be able to help you, but at least they won't be mean. Hey, Brian, before we move on to the next one, I want to do 2 quick real-time follow-ups. So 1, Stack Overflow sold to tech giant Process. We've all heard of them, for $1.8 billion. So wow. That is not messing around. That forum site did all right. Jill Spolsky and Jeff Atwood did okay. And then the other one is, unfortunately, Dan Heford out there in the live stream said he just ran Caffeinate 3 times on his Mac and he can't get it to sleep and it's acting jittery and anxious. So I don't really know what we can do about that, but maybe we should just go to TikTok. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. So have you ever really wanted to make a quick edit to something you've got in a GitHub repo, but you're kind of stuck with that rudimentary, feels like you're working with Notepad, maybe a little bit? Yeah,
so you click the edit, there's a little edit thing, you find the file, you edit it, and then you go in there and there's like no help and you just type away. Yeah, I do that. I don't love it, but I do that.
Feels like you're a Notepad. Well, GitHub announced GitHub Codespaces recently, which is cloud-hosted development environments with powerful machines, and you have to pay for them. But one of the fun bonus features that they launched at the same time that we only really announced on TikTok and other social media is called Github.dev. So you can actually go to any GitHub repo and say, I just want to edit this GitHub repo that I have here. And I can just press the dot key. And that will reopen this GitHub repository in something called Github.dev. So this is an entirely web browser-based version of VS Code that's built right into GitHub. It works on any GitHub repo. And there's no server behind it. It's serverless, so there's nothing that you need to pay for here. And so it also has some limited functionality because there's no backend. This is all just front end running in your web browser. But what's really cool is that you can come in here and you can edit, you can add new files. Like I can go in here and add, a new Python file in the file explorer on the left. I can just click and add a new file and I can work with this more like I'm used to working with a text editor. And as I can just say import Flask, for example. And because there's support for different extensions that are web enabled that know how to work in this new mode. So we've actually added the Python extension recently in here. So I can actually get some autocomplete from some of the modules. So if I say from Flask import Flask, I get the autocomplete for that Flask object. And I can do the typical thing where I can say Flask equals name, and I can type app dot, and I get all of this, add template, filter, route, all those in the autocomplete. So I can actually get a more real editing experience with that productivity, things like that I'm used to when I'm working with text editor. But this is all using the storage file system from the web browser's local storage, as well as the files from the GitHub repo. So if, for example, if I go in here and just change hello world to hello Python bytes in this code here, and I hit save on a piece of code, and then I see I've got source control changes here, and It's telling me that I can click on that file and I can actually see a diff of that file side by side, and I can just commit that using the source control panel. And if I add this commit, it'll go directly into my GitHub repo. So that's pretty cool. So a lot of
that's amazing. I do see right below the source control thing a play debug thing.
So that doesn't
that doesn't work yet, does it?
Yeah, so that's what there's like continue working on code spaces at that point. You got to get a real machine for.
I see. It kicks you over to the hosted, the real hosted version.
Yeah, but there is some. We're actually pushing the boundaries of what you can do in these web versions in some interesting ways. So you can get basic syntax highlighting as you saw, autocomplete, but there's no Python interpreter. So when I go to definition, say I want to go to definition on this Flask module, it just brings up type hints, the type hints that we have.
I see the type shed type hints. Okay,
yeah,
it's still okay though. It's still better than like what you get with a normal editor.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. One kind of bonus thing I want to throw in here is that so if you go to the extensions tab, you'll be able to search and you'll see which extensions are web enabled. And one of the fun ones that somebody on our team put out is this VS Code PyIodide one. So if you actually open a Jupyter notebook, you can run a little bit of Python code from these cells here using PyIodide. So that's pretty neat.
Oh wow!
So
WebAssembly for the win.
Yeah. So that's Github.dev. I think it's really cool how much more you can do right from the browser within GitHub.
Brian, did you know about this?
I didn't, and I was just playing with it in the background on my own repo. I was looking through the extensions, and maybe you know off the top of your head, Dan, can I get the Vim mode in this extension?
Well, if you you'll see which ones are so if they're highlighted here and not grayed out, so this Vim extension works. So you can see which ones are available. It says available in VS Code.
You just made Brian's day. There's a couple of Vim options.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't use any editor without Vim mode anymore. My brain just doesn't work without.
How do you use Google Docs or like other editors or anything like that?
What's that?
How do you use Google Docs or some other editor?
I paste into that after I've written the stuff in somewhere else.
Nice. Dan, when I first saw this, I was on my GitHub repo and I'm like, oh, let me just hit dot because it seems like that's too simple, but I'll try it. And then boom, it came an editor. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. And then I went into the settings and I put it into dark mode and I changed the font size and all the font family. And I'm like, oh, this is nice. Like this is really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Let me throw one more bonus in here. So if I change this to say I edit this a Jupyter notebook cell here, and if I go into the diff if I go into the source control panel after editing this Jupyter notebook cell, I can actually see a real diff side by side with those cells. So that's something cool you can do without having to install a full editor and things locally.
Very cool. Yeah, and it's a nice diff of the cell contents, not like the JSON crazy diff.
Yeah, you get the left right with red green add remove. Yeah, and outputs are squashed. So you're not seeing a bunch of. If you diff a notebook, you'll see a bunch of XML and JSON being removed and added. This is more of that rich.
Take all of the various encoding language storage formats and then jam them all together and then diff that. That's fun.
Cool.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. This is a great view.
Like it. I'm gonna use it.
Indeed.
So one of the things that I don't really edit in GitHub very much. What happens like once you're done? Does it create a merge request, or just edit it in place, or
it makes a commit directly to the repository? So I can just throw that right in there. And
so you obviously have to have permissions. You have to be one of the people that can commit directly to that branch, right? So
yeah, this is great. I was so delighted when I saw it. So I'm going to definitely use this.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice. All right, Brian, am I up on the next one?
You are.
All right, on. Let's move on to it. Okay. I'm resisting the temptation to hit dot and play around with the wake pie. Instead, let me take you over here. So we go to Python. That's not Python Bytes. It's close, but not exactly. Oh my gosh. I don't even, why did I type com? I've never, hold on. Bytes.fm. That's our domain. So we're live streaming right now, by the way, if you didn't notice. If you go over here, notice I've got Firefox that I'm using, and it has this little shield. And almost anything you go to, oh man, I don't want to go to a news site, but let's go to CNN. And you'll come over here and you'll see a bunch of stuff up here getting blocked, like social media trackers, tracking content. Like, look at that. That's a ridiculous amount of gross Google Analytics, Google Tag Services, Rubicon Project, US East, apparently. Like, that's bad, right? So I've done a lot of work to get us away from retargeting, tracking, and we have no known trackers. And I'm running a VPN, which probably blocked a bunch of the ones off of CNN. So that was the ones that got through the blocking and stuff. So it's really nice to not have all that stuff and let people come visit the site and know that we're not retargeting them. We're not tracking them. We're not doing stuff. We're just giving them a podcast, or same thing over on Talk Python Training or Talk Python or whatever. Right? You go there, you get the content. We offer things like a podcast with ads that people can take, and that's enough. We don't need to like follow you around for all sorts of creepy reasons, right? The drawback is we don't have a lot of analytics, right? We can get a sense about like download numbers and things like that, but we can't report like, well, in the last hour since we talked about this thing, here's the traffic, can we? Or could we? So Junction Apps over on Twitter said, hey, you know what? I heard you going on and on about the retargeting of all these places and how you dropped it. Have you heard about goaccess.io? Have either of you heard about this thing?
No,
I hadn't either, but check it out. It's super cool. So what it is it is a Google Analytics-like service that you install on your server. And what it does, let's see if I can open this image in a tab so it doesn't go away. What it does is it looks and tails your logs and gives you real-time analytics on your logs rather than by looking at going through JavaScript and hooking into people's browsers. So no tracking, none of that stuff. But you can come over here and in your terminal, run it and get a real-time view of your traffic, your visitors, all the kind of stuff you would expect from Google Analytics visually as a graph-like thing in your terminal. Interesting, huh?
it's really
Yes. What kind of information are you getting?
Well, probably the easiest way to find out is they have a web view and they have the terminal view. And the web view is really generate a HTML file and then just request it. So there's not like a web server type thing. But you can go over here and click. It says here, I'll give you the features real quick. Then open up the demo. It says fast, real-time, millisecond based, latency updates written in C. Only uses n cursors as the dependencies. Works on almost all the formats, Nginx amongst the others. Just set the log format and run it on your log. Got the terminal and the UI, the web UI bit. So if you go over here, you can see, like, look at this off of just the log files. So you can see things like here, I'll pull them up. So you can go over and say, well, what are the referring URLs? Let me make that small so you can kind of see in here. Unfortunately, here's the referring URLs. So you can see in this example, they were, shop, internet, whatever, right? These little, it's a fake site, but you can come over here and like actually see graphs as well as like grids and pages, stuff like think Google Analytics. But if you run a site, you can point this against your logs and get real-time information in the terminal or in this web view. And yeah, it's pretty neat.
And so do you have to install anything, or do you just run this and it finds the logs on your system and pulls it all together?
Yeah, you do install. Let's see here. So there's a getting started, and it says the way to get started probably to use a package manager for your Linux machine if you're running on Linux, or you can get a Docker image and you run it. And then what you do is you just simply run the command against your log file and tell it what format, and boom, off it goes. So you could set it up as a cron job or something that will then generate the HTML file, and you could just refresh that, however often you want to, or run the terminal one.
You could run it once a day too.
Yeah.
And
you
save
don't need to.
save the report
Exactly.
output.
Yeah, you don't need real time. You need just sort of how's the day going, something like that. How was yesterday?
Right. So like one of the things that I use information like this about is I don't really want to track users. I don't care about individual users, but I do want to know, like I've got putting out different content on my blog or on the podcast, which ones which ones are resonating with people.
Yes, exactly.
And
That would be
maybe
really
do more
nice.
of that.
Yep.
So
you can see like there's a little bunch of options here. Referring sites, hosts, requested files they call it, but it's really just URLs. So you go over here and this would tell you sort of the traffic, across your various pages. Right. So this would be like your list. This requested files URLs is the one you'd want.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I haven't set this up yet, but it looks pretty neat and it could be worth checking out.
Yeah. Neat.
And I guess even you could download your logs and not install it on your server if you really wanted, right? You want this view, but you don't actually want to put it on your server because putting stuff on the server, well, so you could download it and then just run it against your logs locally.
And you might be uploading your logs to a storage account somewhere too, on a cron.
Yeah, exactly. You could push the logs out instead of running it there. So a bunch of cool ways to use this, but if people are running web apps and they want more visibility into it, this looks like a cool thing. So thanks, Junction, for sending that over. All right, off to you, Brian.
I want to talk about keyboards a little bit. So this was a topic recommended by somebody named Blaze, I think. So there's a package called KMK. It's actually a collection of pieces of software, but it's we're linking to the KMK firmware. So this is firmware for computer keyboards written and configured in CircuitPython. So got super excited about this. I'm still kind of excited about it. The gist of it is you've got if you've got a keyboard that runs run CircuitPython and is powerful enough to run to handle your keyboard and stuff. So there's a couple tips in here. There's a couple available through Adafruit of different boards that would work. We'll get into the details a little bit more, but basically you can configure a keyboard with a single Python file. You can it controls both split keyboards, two-piece keyboards, and single keyboards. You can hook up macros, things like chainable macros, so you can have key sequences built into one key, or you can hook it up so that a key hitting multiple times, you can hit like a particular key 3 times in a row and you'll have one action versus something else. So even cool. Controlling underglow and LEDs and backlights and all that sort of stuff totally would be fun. I want to use this. I don't know how. It seems like a lot of work though. So so we're linking to the project, and there's some information here. There's some guides on how to get started, and then we're also going to run. I found somebody that ran this, and he's got a video that walks through doing it. But the gist of it is there aren't any keyboards that do this right away. So you've got to take an existing keyboard, rip out the existing circuit board, and replace it with one of the Adafruit boards, and then reprogram it. So if you're the kind of person that's okay with ripping the circuit board out of your keyboard and replacing it with something else, that'd be great. And I actually wouldn't mind doing this. I think that'd be fun. But I'd kind of like to know which keyboards I can do this with and which ones I can't. I know there's a huge list of keyboards out there, but even just a couple like starter kits would be great to hear.
It really works well with this one. And here's where the CircuitPython board fits in there easily rather than it doesn't really go back in.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is I'd love somebody from Adafruit or from anybody working on CircuitPython or the KMK team or somebody to maybe put a couple more tutorials out to just say, hey, this is how you do it for like, I'd love it to have like an off the shelf full keyboard, even if it's small or whatever, that it said, okay, here's how you do it. You pull this circuit board out, put this other one in. It's like $40 on Adafruit, and there you go. You can try it, and here's a sample of file that you would run just a normal keyboard usage, and now you can customize it, because just getting back to a workable keyboard seems already like a lot of work, but it still looks fun. I'd love to be able to hack a keyboard with Python.
Very cool. Dan, what kind of keyboard do you use?
Well, I use I'm a big fan of the thin keys, right? The very light travel keys, but I got an ergonomic keyboard, so thin ergonomic Logitech.
Nice. I've got the Microsoft Sculpt ergonomic, which I absolutely love. I know Brian's got even more exotic stuff that he's running over there.
I don't know if I can get mine up here. I'll do the camera
it's
instead.
Like it's mounted to the
Oh, my junk too. I've got a Kinesis.
Yeah, the Kinesis inverted ones. Those are super interesting. What I would like to see would be some keyboard manufacturer saying, we're shipping a keyboard to you. Oh, and you can program it with Python and basically do this for you as a packaged thing and just, build it out of these components. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, I think it'd be fun with everyone decking out their home offices these days if you could do a little bit of magic light show while you're presenting or talking on a call. That would be really cool.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah. Hey, Brett Cannon's out there in the live stream. Dan, you may have heard of this guy. Pablo Salgado has programmed his keyboard's RGB lights to color code the build bot status for C. That's awesome. So like it's green if everything's good, but it turns red if CI fails or something like that. Oh, that's awesome, Brett. Thanks for sharing.
That'd be cool.
Indeed.
I never really, when I first saw the LEDs under the keyboards, I thought, gamers like it, but I don't think I would probably have a use for it. But now I'm jealous. I want light up things on my keyboard. It'd be fun.
Yeah, especially if you could program them, right? Like this example here. My mouse sits here and pulsates and changes color. But because it's on a Mac, the software doesn't work and I can't do anything with it. So it just annoys me there. It's a good mouse otherwise, but anyway.
So is it a Windows only thing or what?
No, the mouse is perfect on Mac, but the software that lets you customize it and do interesting things to the colors doesn't work on the Mac.
Lame.
Super lame. All right. What is not lame is this last thing that Dan has got here, because this thing has been blowing up on Twitter. It's all of a day old with like 2,000 GitHub stars. And I was like, oh, this has got to be covered. And then, Dan, you were on it.
Yeah, I just saw it yesterday, and I was like, I have to talk about this. So I know that when I've built web apps in the past, one of the big frustrations I have is that when you want to add something new to your database, you need to add it to the SQL queries. You need to add something to the backend code. You need to add a piece to the API that then returns that new object to users. And then in your client code, you need to consume it. And so there's all this repetition that you're doing across your web app every time you need to make a change to your data or add a new object. And that's very error prone as well. And so things like SQL Alchemy, you can use to write code that interacts with your database. And then things like FastAPI, you can use Pydantic to return models to your users, to your APIs. But then now we had this thing where you have SQL Alchemy models and Pydantic models, and then you're translating back and forth between them. And so Sebastian Ramirez, who just released yesterday this new SQL model library, which looks just awesome because it actually combines the schema for talking to the database and speaking to your API into one schema object that you write. So what's really cool about this is that, so the way you work with this is that you define your objects. For example, he's got in the GitHub repo this hero class with an ID, name, secret name, age, and it's got some of the SQL Alchemy type things, like it's your primary key, is the ID is optional, but it's defaults to on its primary key. So what's really cool about it, this class is both a SQL Alchemy model and a Bidantic model. I don't know how he did that. He said there's some magic that's going on behind the scenes. And so what's really cool is that you can use this to instantiate your database. So you've got this hero class. You can create objects in the database by going hero1, hero2, hero3 equals hero bracket and pass the name, secret name, all the fields to the object. And you can also return those same objects. You can use that same hero class and use it in your FastAPI. So you can accept hero objects. You can return hero objects. And so that's one, you write that one schema and you use it in multiple places.
Yeah, what you have on the screen here for FastAPI is response model equals the database entity, which that then drives the OpenAPI documentation in addition to just driving. Yeah, exactly. You got it right there. So you can go there and it's sort of end to end the same model, which I think is really great.
Yeah, and so you can look at with FastAPI, if you go to /docs, you get the Swagger UI, and so you can see that same schema with the ID, name, secret name, age. And what's really cool about that is that it also generates the OpenAPI.json, and so you can use tools like OpenAPI Generator to even generate client code in any different language that you're using, like Python, JavaScript, Lua, and so you can, if you just went back to that original hero class and added a new field, you could potentially have it show up in all different layers of your application.
Right, it's suited, including the consuming clients, because they could regen off of the JSON schema, right?
Yeah. So I think that's really cool. And one other really nice thing that Sebastian did here is that he really emphasized making sure that in the editors that you have a good experience with autocomplete, because in the past, stuff like the Django ORM and the SQL Alchemy ORM, the editors have had to write custom code to be able to have a good autocomplete experience for that. And so Sebastian used type hints really well throughout the design of this, so that as you're returning objects from the database, you actually get, once you return that object from the database, you actually get autocomplete on it. I can show that here.
Yeah, that's really cool, because a lot of times you just get ** KWR and you're like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, so I got this statement select hero where hero name equals hero name, and then the object that returns, I can go hero dot and then
put it at the very end of the line, maybe, or the next line. Yeah.
I can access all the
nice.
properties on the hero object. One cool thing about how he did this, he used a proposal from Eric Trout, the author of Pyrite, called the data class transform. That it's this proposal that basically you can annotate various objects to say that they behave like data classes. And so that's kind of the magic that allows some of this dynamic behavior to show up in type checkers.
Oh, I love it, because so often you'll do a SQL Alchemy query or something, and what you get back, it's so many layers, it's lost what that type is. And you're just like, now I got to like re-annotate it again.
I got to search for everything, look at all the different source code in my code base and stuff like that. So this is really
cool. Got some great comments in the chat. Here's one. I swear Sebastian spends as much time on his docs as he does his code. Amazing talent. And we were talking about type hints and the editor experience as well. Sebastian does a great job with the onboarding experience as well as the developer experience. And a lot of large companies could pay attention to what this one person is doing, making it easy for people to pick up a new tool. It's amazing.
If you look at the docs here, this looks like a professional team wrote all this stuff, right? This is incredible.
Instead, a very productive guy.
And then Brett, good question. I want to know how Sebastian manages to release a new, very cool project every single year. No kidding, man. Guy's a powerhouse. He's like changing how we do web development, and it's just one person. But
yeah, I think I can speak to that just a little bit. By the way, if you look at the magic of FastAPI, you look at what's happening here. These are really nice things to work with, but they're not from the ground recreations of what they are. This takes Pydantic plus SQL Alchemy and makes it better. FastAPI takes Starlet and Pydantic and makes them better, right? It's like the recombining of things that are already really good into something better.
Yeah, and some cool things that come as a result of that repackaging. So according to Sebastian, this should support async database sessions out of the box because that's something that SQL Alchemy supports. Alembic migrations as well. And in theory, it should be possible to integrate with PostGIS and TS vectors for doing geo stuff and full text search with Postgres, but he says he hasn't tested it yet.
Yeah, I have no idea, but potentially async and await as well now that SQL Alchemy supports that.
Yep.
But again, this is a day old, so we haven't really had the chance to dig in it too much. I want to highlight just a couple more comments. Savannah on the live stream says, Sebastian's attention to developer experience is so awesome. Yeah, I agree. Keep it up, Sebastian. And Rehan says, it looks great for a toy case, but people make professional interior systems. Do they really want to share the same types between their database and their REST API? That's a good question. I was thinking about that as well. One of the challenges that you can run into when you just sort of say, oh, here's my data model out onto the internet as JSON, and then especially taking it back, is you can run into like situations where you overexpose information, or you run into a mass assignment type of bugs where values get set or you didn't expect them to be set. So with Pydantic, you can do things like you have to call to JSON, but you can also, or to dict, I can't remember, I think to dict, but you explicitly opt in or opt out certain fields. So you could do things like that about bringing those in. So pretty neat, but yeah, you got to be a little bit careful about that. But yeah, very cool stuff.
You don't want your password hashes on your user object.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're going to return your user, you don't necessarily want to exactly return, say, the password hash, or God forbid, not just the straight password. You're not hashing it. But that's a bigger problem, but still.
Oh, I wanted to bring up one more thing is his choice of heroes in his example. Love these. We got Dead Pond, Spider Boy, and Rusty Man. Hilarious.
Love it. Yeah, those are great.
Well, so those are our 6 items. Do we have any extras? Got anything to share?
Brian, sometimes I have extra 9 times here all about it. I got none this time. How about you?
Really? I've got like 2. So
Bring them on.
So first one I wanted to bring up was a really fun episode. People know I also do a podcast called Test and Code. Episode 163 it's a talk with Stéphane Bidoul about pip install of local directory. And so if you're doing anything where you do the pip install of a local directory, definitely check that out. Or especially if you never knew that you could do that, it's a good episode. The other thing I wanted to bring up is it's been like 5 episodes since I plugged my book, but no, there's a chapter 12 is up. So chapter 12, one of the things I got questions about for the first edition was the whole book is talking about testing packages, and there's a lot more in the Python world than just packages. So chapter 12 is a reaction to that. It's testing scripts and applications. So it's not a pip. If you don't have a pip installable package, you can still use PyTest to test it. And chapter 12 directly addresses that. So I wanted to bring that up.
Awesome. Alvaro out in the live stream says, how is the second edition testing book going? Yeah, it looks like chapter 12 is coming along. Well done. You're basically done, Brian. You're going on vacation.
Well, there were less than 10 chapters in the first book, but now I'm working on chapter 13, planning on 17 altogether. It's going to come out in hard copy early next year. So
super.
I have
how about
one extra.
You, Dan?
Yep. So one cool library that I wanted to share is Type for Py. So we've been talking about types a lot lately. Seems like it's a regular topic of conversation, and they can provide a lot of benefits to your code base and to text editors like VS Code or PyCharm. And but what happens if you want to retrofit or add a bunch of types to a code base that's not typed already, that's a big daunting task. And so I came across this library, shared amongst our team. And what I thought was really cool about it is that it's a state-of-the-art machine learning model for inferring types. So we've talked about before, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could just go generate all the types for all the packages out there so that we could have great autocomplete on everything? But it turns out you can't, because you can't do that until you actually run the code and have the objects to bind it to. And so this machine learning model is sort of the latest in a line of attempts from different researchers to create a good machine learning model for inferring types. What I like about it is not only is it sort of best in class in terms of its accuracy, is that the author of this machine learning model open sourced the training data set with 4.3 million type annotations in it, the training code, so you can go in and actually train this on your own code following some of these very simple commands to train the model and process the data with your own code base. He open sourced a VS Code extension, so you can actually have developers using it. It's not just some, hey, this is our results, QAD, go read the paper. It's actually something that you can use. And so if you're looking at trying to retrofit a bunch of types into your code base, this is something you might want to try out. Just one sort of quick caveat that the sample VS Code extension uses the machine learning model that's hosted on typeforpy.com. And so if you're not working on an open source project, you probably want to fork the extension and stand up the machine learning model using the web server that he links to.
Yeah, that's a good bit of warning, but this looks super cool. It seems like one of those things you could do a first pass, retrofit it, and then go back and check it out, run MyPy against it. You could even go to Pydantic and use the validate decorator and put that on all the things and then run your tests. The validate actually verifies the type annotations really match the runtime behavior. So yeah, a lot of neat things. Excellent.
Cool.
Brian, did you think that was funny?
No, not funny at all.
This might be funny.
We need something funny.
Yeah, so we've been doing a lot of Geek and Poke lately, and yeah, this is a really good one. So, we talk about testing and we talk about continuous integration. If you want to take that, like to go from testing to CI to the next level, we're talking continuous delivery, right? I'm going to get pushed to the production branch. That's going to kick off the CI, which is going to kick off a deployment. It's glorious, right?
Yeah.
Well, we've got a cartoon around it. So there's this man and woman developer pair, and they're just looking like perplexed at each other. It says, for 5 days, I've been doing nothing else than trying to deploy this blinking application on our production environment. Title, continuous deployment. That's one way to interpret
Taking
that term.
Literal.
Very literal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully that was more funny.
Yeah. So
Funnier.
I've got a not very good joke, but I thought it was funny anyway. It was shared to us. It was first from Carla, Not a Robot. It's a great handle. And told to us by Blue Fiddle Guy also. So the joke is, if a programmer gets an interview because of a recommendation from a friend, are they being passed by reference instead of value? Yeah,
I love it.
So
definitely passed by reference.
Definitely.
Well, this has been fun. So thanks everybody. Thanks Dan for showing up.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, guys. Thanks everyone out there.
Bye.